I was sitting on the porch, cradling a warm cup of coffee between my hands, when my phone buzzed. Seeing Maricella's name light up the screen, I smiled. I was ready to hear her voice, to share a moment like we always had. But that smile faded the moment she spoke. "You're too old, Mom," she said, her tone flat and final. "It's my wedding. I don't want you there." The words hit me harder than I expected. I blinked, searching for a sign she was joking, but all I found was cold certainty in her eyes. I didn't respond. I simply nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and said nothing. For years, I'd watched her grow from a curious toddler to a young woman chasing dreams I helped nurture. I had stayed up late driving her to plays and school events, worked extra shifts to pay for her college. I sacrificed quietly, never asking for thanks. Yet now, it seemed all those years were invisible, as if I were a stranger to my own daughter. I hung up the phone and stared out over the garden, the steam rising from my coffee, curling in the crisp morning air. The house was too quiet without her voice. I thought of my late husband, Thomas, and the life we built together. How love once felt steady, unbreakable. I felt the weight of loneliness settling in. But even in that ache, something inside me shifted, a quiet resolve forming. I wouldn't crumble beneath this rejection. Not now, not ever. I took a slow sip of the coffee, letting its warmth fill me. This wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. And soon, they would see that age was never a measure of worth. I spent the rest of the day lost in memories, the kind that both comfort and sting. The nights I stayed up helping Maricela with her homework. The mornings I made sure she had breakfast before rushing to work. The times I missed my own appointments just to drive her to school plays or doctor visits. All the quiet sacrifices I made, hoping they would shape a better future for her. I remembered the winter when money was tight, and I sold my grandmother's locket just to cover her college application fee. She never knew. I didn't want her to know. That was the cost of love, the things we give without a second thought, the things we hide in the shadows. But now, after all that, she said I was too old. It felt like my entire lifetime of love had been dismissed with a few cold words. Late that evening, my phone rang. It was Lydia, my oldest and closest friend. I heard she said softly, "Are you okay?" I hesitated, then let the weight of it pour out. I told her everything, how Maricela had shut me out, how it felt to be erased by your own child. Lydia listened without interruption. Her silence, a balm for my wounded heart. "You're more than their words, Varela," she said finally. "You're the heart of that family, even if they can't see it yet. Don't let their blindness dim your light." Her words kindled a spark I thought had died. Maybe silence wasn't the answer. Maybe it was time I showed them who I really was. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list what I owned, what I could hold on to. Not much, but enough. Among the papers and photographs, I found an old journal. It was worn but full of my thoughts, poems, and memories that no one else knew. This journal would be my quiet strength. While sorting through boxes in the attic, I found a dusty wooden chest I hadn't opened in years. The lid creaked as I lifted it, revealing a collection of letters tied with faded ribbons and a stack of old photographs. I recognized my sister Amira's handwriting immediately. Amira was always the wild one, the family rebel, but her letters were filled with love and hope. I unfolded one carefully addressed to Maricela, one she had never sent. In it, Amira warned of misunderstandings and pride's power to destroy family bonds. She urged forgiveness, reminding them that family was the most precious gift. I read the letter twice, tears stinging my eyes. I realized then that maybe Maricela's harshness was a shield hiding pain or fear I hadn't understood. Among the letters lay a delicate silver pendant, an heirloom passed down through generations, a symbol of strength and resilience. It was a piece I had kept hidden, hoping one day to give it to Maricela when the time was right. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter of my own. I explained the meaning of the pendant and shared the words from Amira's letter. I told her that no matter what had happened, our family ties were worth fighting for. I folded the letter, placed the pendant inside a small box, and sealed it with a quiet hope. I wondered if she would accept it, or if it would be just another reminder of the distance growing between us. I sent the package without a word, leaving my heart open and vulnerable, waiting for a sign. When the days stretched on without a response, I held on to the hope that sometimes love needed time to heal. Soon, a phone call came that I never expected. Her voice was softer, hesitant, and it changed everything. The phone rang late one afternoon, jolting me from a restless afternoon nap. I hesitated before answering, unsure who it might be. When I heard Maricella's voice, it caught me completely off guard. I got something, she said quietly. A letter from Aunt Amira and the pendant. Why now? Her question hung between us like fragile glass. I chose my words with care, not wanting to push too hard. Because family is bigger than pride, Maricela. Love isn't measured by age or appearances. She sighed deeply and finally opened up. She spoke of fears I hadn't guessed, how she felt trapped by expectations, overwhelmed by the weight of trying to live up to everyone's hopes. She felt lost, tangled between who she was and who others wanted her to be. For the first time in a long while, we truly talked. I listened with an open heart, hearing not just the words, but the emotions beneath. She told me she didn't know how to bridge the gap between us. I told her I didn't either, but I wanted to try. We agreed to meet in person. The thought both excited and scared me. Would this be the chance to mend what was broken, or the final goodbye we both feared? In the days before our meeting, I reread the letters from Amira, clung to memories, and whispered prayers for strength. I understood now that healing was a journey, not a single step. When the day arrived, I prepared carefully, not with grand gestures, but with quiet hope and honesty. And as I left the house, I knew this moment could change everything. What would our reunion bring, forgiveness or further heartache? Tomorrow, I would find out. We met at a quiet cafe, the kind with soft lighting and a gentle hum of conversation. Sitting across from Maricela, I felt the weight of years between us, yet also a fragile hope. I began to share stories I had never told her before. The struggles, the dreams deferred, the quiet love that never wavered. Maricela's eyes glistened as she listened, and when it was her turn, she revealed the pressures she'd felt, the insecurities she'd hidden beneath a mask of independence. She spoke of the fear of failing, of disappointing those she loved, and how that fear had made her push me away. I pulled out the worn journal I'd found in the attic and opened it to pages filled with poems about strength, hope, and forgiveness. I watched as Maricela traced the words with trembling fingers, her defenses softening. She reached for the silver pendant and held it close, her voice barely a whisper. This means more than I realized. For the first time in a long time, the walls between us began to crumble. We talked late into the afternoon, laughter and tears mingling, healing old wounds in real time. But as the sun began to set, Maricela's expression changed. She hesitated, then said, "The wedding's still coming, and I don't know if I'm ready to promise you a seat." "Not yet." I nodded, understanding the truth behind her words. Healing wasn't instant, and forgiveness was a path we'd have to walk slowly. I left the cafe with a heart lighter than before, knowing this fragile moment was a beginning, not an end. There was still much to be done, and tomorrow I would find a new way to show my strength. After that meeting, I focused on myself in a way I hadn't allowed before. I reconnected with old friends and joined a local art group, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I volunteered at the community center, mentoring young women who reminded me of Maricela, uncertain, but full of potential. Slowly, I felt my confidence return, not in a loud or demanding way, but as a steady, quiet power that radiated from within. People began to notice. Neighbors greeted me with smiles, and old friends sought my company more often. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a local event about resilience and family, a chance to share my story openly for the first time. Standing before the small crowd, I told them about love's sacrifice and the strength to keep going even when you feel unseen. Word of my talk spread, reaching Maricella's ears. I heard later from a mutual friend that she felt a mix of pride and regret. My quiet power was undeniable. I was no longer the shadow she tried to push aside. When Christmas came, I sent a hand-painted card to the whole family. Inside, I included a poem from my journal about love that endures beyond words, beyond time. It was a gentle reminder that I was still here, stronger and unbroken. Days passed before Maricela called again, this time softer, more uncertain. She wanted to meet, to talk, maybe to try again. I welcomed the chance, knowing that sometimes the loudest voices are the quietest ones who have endured the most. And as the holidays drew near, I prepared for a family gathering that might finally bring us closer. Christmas morning arrived cold and clear, and the house filled slowly with the familiar chatter and laughter of family. I arrived last, carrying a small box wrapped in simple paper. The room fell quiet as I stepped inside, eyes flicking to me with a mixture of surprise and something unreadable. I quietly handed the small box to Maricela. She hesitated, then slowly lifted the lid. Inside was an old photograph, a picture of her Aunt Amira looking young and defiant, but with kind eyes. Beneath it lay a worn, leather-bound journal, Amira's diary filled with pages of memories, confessions, and hopes. I took a deep breath and began to read aloud. These are the words your aunt wrote years ago. Though she was rebellious, she always knew one truth. Family is our greatest strength. Our home when the world feels cold. No matter the storms we face, it's the love that holds us together. As I spoke, the room fell silent. I could see the flicker of something in Maricela's eyes, surprise, understanding, maybe even regret. The room held a fragile peace as the last lines hung in the air. No one spoke at first. Then, slowly, conversations resumed, gentler, now more sincere. But beneath the warmth, a silent question lingered, a question we all knew, but no one dared voice aloud. Could the wounds of the past ever truly heal? Or were we forever marked by the years of silence and distance? As the evening wore on, I found myself holding Maricela's gaze longer than before. In that moment, I saw not just my daughter, but a woman grappling with her own fears and regrets. The night ended with cautious smiles and tentative hugs, small steps forward on a long, uncertain road. I went to bed that night with a quiet hope blooming in my chest, knowing that tomorrow held the promise of more honest conversations. And as the first light of dawn crept through the window, I knew it was time to confront the past, not with anger, but with open arms. The next day, Maricela invited me to visit her garden, a place, she said, helped her think. As I stepped between rows of blooming roses and jasmine, I felt the weight of years between us, yet also the fragile thread of connection we'd begun to weave. We sat quietly on the bench, watching the sunlight filter through leaves. I shared stories of Thomas, the man I had loved, and the dreams we once held for our family. Maricela listened, her eyes softening, revealing the daughter I'd thought I'd lost. She spoke too, opening up about the pressure she'd carried, trying to be the perfect daughter, the successful woman, while feeling trapped beneath the weight of expectations. She admitted to feeling lost, caught between wanting to please others and finding her own path. We cried together, letting go of years of silence and misunderstanding. In those tears, something shifted, a forgiveness unspoken, but deeply felt. I asked gently if she was ready to reconsider the wedding guest list, if there might be room for me after all. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I don't know yet," she said honestly, "but I want to try." That moment felt like a fragile promise, a step toward healing that neither of us could yet see the end of. As we walked back through the garden hand in hand, I felt hope stirring anew. There was still so much to rebuild, but for the first time I believed we could. And when the evening came, I began to prepare for a new chapter 1, where love might finally be enough. Months passed quietly each day, bringing small changes. Maricela reached out more often, her voice warmer, her messages less guarded. She invited me to a small pre-wedding gathering, a chance to see the friends and faces who would soon be part of her new life. I arrived early, nervous but hopeful. The room buzzed with laughter and chatter, and I watched as Maricela moved gracefully among her guests. For a moment, our eyes met, and she smiled a genuine smile that reached her eyes and settled deep in her heart. It was different now. The walls that once separated us had softened. I saw not the daughter who pushed me away, but the woman she was becoming stronger, more certain, ready to face her past and future. At the rehearsal dinner, I stood quietly to the side, absorbing the moment. Old friends welcomed me with nods and kind words. New faces greeted me with curiosity and respect. Maricela's fiancé came over offering a warm handshake and an earnest thanks. The evening unfolded with ease and warmth, and for the first time in years, I felt a true part of something again. But amid the joy, a question lingered in my mind, quiet but persistent. Could this wedding be more than a ceremony? Could it be the start of something new, a chance to rewrite the story between us? As the night drew to a close and the last song played, I felt a lightness inside a fragile hope blooming in my chest. Tomorrow was the wedding day, and with it, a chance to walk a path neither of us had dared before together. The morning sun cast a gentle glow through the curtains as I prepared quietly. I chose a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but enough to make me feel like I belonged. I wanted to be present fully myself, without pretense or apology. Maricela arrived soon after, radiant and nervous. When she saw me, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Mom," she whispered, stepping forward, "I'm sorry for everything. I want you here with me." I smiled, feeling the years of pain and distance melt away in that single moment. I reached for her hand, and we walked together toward the gathering. The ceremony was filled with warmth and laughter, a celebration not only of two people joining lives, but of family healing. When I stood beside Maricela, I wasn't just a mother attending a wedding. I was a woman who had weathered storms and found strength in love and forgiveness. At the reception, surrounded by friends and family, I felt the joy I had longed for. Maricela and I shared stories and smiles, our bond renewed and stronger than before. As the music played and guests danced, I raised my glass in a quiet toast to second chances, to the resilience of the human heart, and to the family we had rebuilt. The past was never forgotten, but it no longer defined us. Walking beside Maricela, I knew this was more than an ending. It was a beginning, a story rewritten with hope, love, and grace. And as the evening faded into night, I whispered to myself, ready for whatever came next.